Geek Out!
You wanted the best, and you got me instead. Another episode of Kiss My Podcast. This week we're talking all about Rock and Roll Over, the follow-up to Destroyer. We get to hear and see what Kiss sounds like with success. And this week we have a very special guest, someone who I can honestly say, 100% truthfully, I've known his entire life. That would be my brother, Mick Bozek. He is a guy that we've basically helped each other with our fandom of Kiss since day one. Something I guess I really became a Kiss fan first in like 7th or 8th grade. He wasn't that super stoked on it. And then I guess he discovered my Kiss albums and CDs when I was away in college, which I feel like that's like most big brother, younger brother stuff. Like they find like their record or album collection, and then that, you know, it all goes from there. But anyway, Mick, thanks so much for being on the show. This is really cool.
Yeah, I appreciate it, definitely.
So it's something I ask everyone on here to get started off. Who was your favorite member of Kiss and why?
I'll definitely have to say, and I'm sure this is most people's favorite, is Gene, the Demon, for sure. I mean, just you think about Kiss and kind of what they were going for, big picture, and they wanted to be loud and boisterous and everything, and Gene being the front runner for all that stuff. I mean, he definitely caught my eye, and he's what got me into Kiss to begin with.
Yeah, I feel like he definitely, in terms of like Kiss is all about image, and like he definitely is like the center stage guy for he's spitting blood, he's doing the whole thing with fire, the demon persona, the bass that looks like an axe. And also, you were kind of like a bass guy in high school and stuff like that, so that probably drew you into it too, right?
Oh yeah, I mean, I definitely no expert on bass, but seeing Gene, playing bass, that was definitely inspiration for me to pick it up and try to learn as many Kiss songs as I could.
Nice. I mean, like as I said, that's the big thing. I'm no lead guitar guy, but Ace is always my favorite, and he inspired me to really hunker down and learn how to play guitar. And I think that's something that's really all you can ask. I mean, that's the best possible compliment you could probably give a musician too, is inspiring them to pick up that instrument and try to learn their stuff. A funny story that like I think's funny is the first time I remember really getting into Kiss was there was an I think it was Entertainment Weekly had a magazine of like the 100 most shocking or 100 greatest moments in rock and roll history or something like that. And on the front cover, they had like a border of a bunch of like smaller moments, and I think it was 100 greatest moments because like I think the John meeting Paul was the number one for the Beatles, I think. But on the side they had a picture in color of Kiss, and I hadn't this is really before the internet was a big thing, so it wasn't as easy to like find pictures of bands and stuff at your house or whatever, unless you were into that band, or Dad definitely wasn't in the Kiss, so you aren't going to find any Kiss albums around the house. But there was a picture of Kiss, and like that really just struck my eye out of everything else. And I think their moment in the countdown was that they had an appearance in Marvel Comics, and like for their big grand introduction. And Gene's a big comic guy, and what they wanted to do, of course, to be outside of the boundaries of normal, was they donated blood and put the blood into the ink, and they mixed it. So like if you have an original copy of that Marvel comic that they were in, their blood is mixed with the ink. And so that was like the big shocking moment for Kiss. And I remember I was like, I would just draw the logo everywhere. There's probably homework assignments and binders of me drawing the logos of Kiss and Kiss everywhere, Kiss everywhere. And I remember, we have a 3-year difference in age. I don't remember how old I was exactly, but I remember we were going to like a family trip or something, and I was drawing Kiss stuff everywhere. And you were still very kind of like wide-eyed, innocent Mick. And and you were like, "Mom, I'm scared. He's drawing Kiss stuff." And which I always thought was really funny, and for some reason that marks kind of the beginning of my love of Kiss. And because Mom and Dad really didn't have much idea of anything what Kiss was. They just thought, heard all the classic crap, which was Knights in Satan's Service and Demon Rock and all that kind of stuff. But and then years later, I don't remember what it was. I think I must have been in college, because I came home, or we were texting or something, and you were like, "Yo, man, that song Strutter is like really awesome." And I was like, holy shit, he found the Holy Grail. And I remember you must have like gone through my CDs or something. Do you remember that? Like, how you came across Kiss or anything, or?
Well, I think my fascination with Kiss was much like anyone in the mid '70s, kind of initial shock of like, who are these people, and what are they doing on Earth? Are they even humans? And slowly from that, I think, me being starting my teenage years, middle school and into high school, seeing Kiss as a rock and roll guys, getting all the girls, kind of that bad boy persona. And then, of course, you having all the CDs, I mean, right there at my disposal. I just started picking them up, and I remember the first one I got double platinum, just because I wanted to hear like every famous song that Kiss came out with, and then from that it was like, okay, now I need to get every album I can get my hands on.
That's right. And I remember double platinum was great because I didn't have that one, and I love that one because there was a double CD. I think it was a double CD. And it was it had that great cover. It looked like a platinum album. It was like all silver.
Yeah.
And it had all kind of like the best stuff through the kind of the makeup era of Kiss. And another funny story we'll save for another time, because I'm planning on having you on for another album, and we'll kind of tease it. Is we won't tell the story, but there's a pretty funny story that I remember with trying to find the Unmasked album at the mall. But we'll save that for another time. But yeah, I remember coming home and yeah, it was kind of cool because we had bonded over movies and stuff. I remember, renting Dick Tracy and the Rocketeer and whatnot, and, Indiana Jones and Star Wars, all that kind of stuff. But we never really bonded over music before. And so that was a cool thing to come home and like be able to like talk about Kiss. And again, you would become like a fan. You weren't just kind of like, oh, I like one or two songs. Like you had a book on Kiss. You were reading Kiss stuff. And like I said, you had a bass and you were learning how to play, different, Gene licks and stuff like that. So that was kind of cool. But yeah, like I said, it's kind of cool. Never thought I'd have you on a podcast before, because I was like, what would we ever talk about? But when I was coming up with doing the Kiss thing, I was like, I got to have Mick on here, especially because of, kind of that brother bond over music, and especially Kiss. But kind of talking about it, I mean, we have you on here. We're talking about Rock and Roll Over. This is the 40th anniversary this year, because it came out in 1976, which is kind of crazy because the album does not sound 40 years old. It was recorded from September to October 1976 at the Star Theater in Nanuet, New York. I don't know if I'm pronouncing that right, but yeah, Nanuet, New York. New York's their stomping ground. They're a New York band. Yeah. So they're they keep their roots in New York for the most part. Occasionally, they'll play in California or whatnot, but New York is homegrown Kiss stuff. Produced by Eddie Kramer, and it was released November 11th, 1976. The two singles were Hard Luck Woman, released November 1st, 1976, and Calling Dr. Love, February 13th, 1976. We'll go into more depth on those two tracks when we get to them when we're going track by track, but those are the two big singles. Some recording notes. The Star Theater was chosen as a recording studio so the drums can get a proper sound. And when I was doing research on it, I was like, what proper sound are they talking about? But then when I listened to the album again, this morning as a refresher, the drums on this album sound amazing. And so, Eddie Kramer and company deciding to record at the Star Theater was an inspired choice, because the drums sound great on this album. And the funny thing is, since they wanted to get the proper sound, Peter Criss had to record his drums in a bathroom, and they communicated via video link, which I thought was kind of funny, especially for like in 1976. So you got like this like big classic rock and roll band, and you got the drummer in the bathroom talking, via video link to record his stuff. Some notes about the album cover. I don't know about you, Mick, but this is my favorite Kiss album cover of all time. I think it sums up each member perfectly. It's got, each section, has kind of like the starry background or the space stuff, the demon, the fire, the cat stuff. And it's done by Michael Dorrit, who we'll talk about way down the line, because, there's so many albums to talk about, but he did the album cover for Sonic Boom in 2009. So Kiss, they like to, obviously there's a huge gap between the two albums, but, they recognized this guy was talented and brought him back for Sonic Boom. And you can definitely see some similarities between those two album covers. But yeah, Mick, where does this album cover fall for you? Is it one of your favorites, or?
I mean, I won't say it's my favorite. Definitely Destroyer is my favorite album cover. I think, but I do like what Kiss started to do with their 1976 albums. I mean, if you look at, Kiss, Hotter Than Hell, and Dressed to Kill, the ones previous to this, was all actual pictures of the band. And then with Destroyer and Rock and Roll over. They went with the drawing, and I think that, like you were saying, like, Kiss is bigger than themselves, bigger than life type personalities, and so when they have these drawings done of the band, they can show that. I mean, on this one, it kind of personifies, the Star Child, Spaceman, Demon, and the Catman. You can see kind of all of them bigger than life on the album covers.
Yeah, I think that's a good point. Like the art of in terms of like drawing it, they were allowed them to do more stuff. I mean, obviously, you're not going to have a actual photograph of Kiss jumping up in glee, while an entire city's blown up in the background. And I always thought that like the Rock and Roll Over cover would be like the perfect tattoo design for Kiss too, because it kind of like lends itself for that. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So even the way like their faces are drawn are perfect. Like some of them are kind of smoother, and the Demons is more kind of jagged. But it's funny because back when I was getting into Kiss, I had most of them on CD, but I actually had 2 on cassette. And one of them was Greatest Kiss, which is like, the greatest hits and stuff. That was the first one I got. Kind of like you with Double Platinum. I wanted to like hear all the, the big hits and singles first. And then I had Rock and Roll Over on cassette. And I remember going to school and having like a cassette player, which like nobody had, because CD players were the cool thing. And then having the headphones that were like the back of your head. You remember those headphones that for some reason those were the coolest thing in the world?
Oh yeah.
I don't know why that was like
mess up your hair.
That's right. I guess. Yeah, that's right. I didn't care about my hair, so it really didn't matter, I guess. But I guess that's a good point. But anyway, let's like dive right into freaking Rock and Roll Over here. So the first track we get is I Want You, written by Paul and sung by Paul. I think it's, again, doing album by album and really talking about the different tracks with my different friends and stuff. I've realized how great Kiss is at writing opening tracks for albums. Like, they get you in the mood, Detroit Rock City, Sam and I were talking about it with Destroyer last week. Detroit Rock City is like the perfect album opener. I Want You is great too, because it starts off acoustic, and you're kind of it's kind of like Battery with Metallica off Puppets, where you're kind of like, what is going on here? This was the band that like they are on the rise to become the biggest band of the 70s at this point, off of Alive and Destroyer. And they start off with this kind of like weird kind of acoustic harmonized thing. You're like, what is going on here? And then it kicks in with that Paul Stanley, as I've come to call it, the sassy bitchy vocals that he does. And, it just has that great riff. And they're just showing that they are a sonically and musically tight rock and roll band. They have that confidence that they didn't have on those first 3 albums, because they had sales and money to back it up now. But what are some of your thoughts on the opening track?
Yeah, I agree. I mean, I think at this point, after, with Alive already coming out in '75, they've gotten past the point of, are we going to be big? And now they're at the point of, how big can we get?
Yeah.
As a band. And so I think, like you'll see with this album, and then with Love Gun, it was kind of like, no one can stop us. We if we want it, we're going to get it. And I Want You, I think, is like the perfect track to start off this album. Yeah,
I think Paul is almost like reaching out to anybody else who hadn't heard Kiss yet and saying, I want you to be join the Kiss army, because like he is like reaching out there. And Paul has such a great way of interacting with people, even though you're listening to him on CD or album or whatever, cassette, and he can't actually respond. You know what I mean? Like, he has such a great presence, even though just on a recorded, studio album.
Yeah.
And actually, fun fact, the first solo in the song is done by Paul Stanley, actually. It's not Ace Frehley. I mean, Ace Frehley kills it on this album. Unfortunately, he doesn't really have any songs of his own. But the first solo you hear on I Want You is done by actually Mr. Paul Stanley himself, which I think is kind of cool. But and like he does solos every so often. Obviously, he's not the lead guitar player, but it's always nice to see him kind of take that charge. And I Want You, like I said, I Want You is just one of my favorite Kiss songs in general. I think it just has that great dynamic of heavy and kind of almost ballad like. And again, that drum sound, Peter Criss kills it on this album. I'm always tough on Peter Criss, because like I just don't know why. It's like the Family Guy thing when no one wants to be Peter Criss, not even Peter Criss. But like his drumming, he brings it. Later on, what happens. But when he needed to bring it, he brought it. And I think his drumming on the track "I Want You" is pretty superb. The next track is "Take Me," written by Paul and Sean Delaney. So Sean Delaney, obviously not an official member of Kiss, but he is referred to often as the fifth member of Kiss. And he's actually a guy we're going to be talking about a lot on this album, which is kind of cool. And he really helped create the dancing that Kiss used to do on stage. I don't know, Mick, if you remember, like back in the day, like we always used to do that thing where like you'd have Gene, Paul, and Ace on stage. And of course, Peter Criss is just like by himself on the drums. But like they would step forward and then kind of like rock back and forth left and right and then headbang, and like it sounds so like obvious and like simple, but like Delaney was a guy who really kind of helped them match, and be in sync. And so again, like there's always there's always like gears turning with Kiss, you know what I mean? It's controlled chaos, except when Gene's hair actually catches on fire and it's not controlled. It's controlled chaos. And so Sean Delaney is a guy that I think is a big part of that. Unfortunately, he died a little while ago, but he's a guy that really helped bring that together with Kiss. And like I said, we'll talk about him a couple more times. Anyway, he helped write this song with Paul Stanley. It's sung by Paul Stanley. Paul's got strong vocals, man. I mean, I was saying earlier, Mick, on one of the earlier podcasts, and you might like this, but I know it's like blasphemy for some, or maybe most people. I think Gene I like Gene as a vocalist better in Kiss. Not all the time, because sometimes he does that really like, that really kind of like cheesy, vocals, which unfortunately he does a lot on this album, and we'll talk about that. But when he actually like sings, and is able to use that rasp, and he has a pretty good range, I think he's the better singer in Kiss. But at this period, I think Paul Stanley, like, that confidence is there, because he's a guy who's I've read his book, Face the Music, which is really good. But I think the confidence, like you're saying, the confidence is finally there. So Paul feels in charge and it isn't afraid to really belt it out now, because again, he has those fans and that maybe not the money now at that point, but he has the success to start backing him up. I like the riffs. I like the harmonized guitar licks and solos. And I think this is like their heaviest, not in terms of like heavy metal sound, because I don't think they're a heavy metal band, but I think this is their heaviest album in terms of riffs. There's just a lot of riffs thrown in here. And it's not just thrown in to be thrown in. They're there and they sound great. And they're kind of it's a little more music going on here than just the standard, cowboy chords and basic riffs here. They're really kind of bringing it, and I think a lot of that came from Destroyer and Bob Ezrin, like sitting them down and being like, "Here's how you play a fucking guitar," But anyway, what are your memories? What are your takes on "Take Me"? Do you like the track?
Yeah, I mean, I'll say all the tracks as we go through them. I mean, definitely "Rock and Roll Over" is the album where really you could turn on any track and I'll be hooked to it. Mm-hmm. I think it just has that vibe to it. But I think "Take Me" is kind of with "I Want You" and then "Take Me." I think Kiss is kind of right off the bat like, hey, this is going to be a sexually driven themed album. Get ready for it. And then as you see with the next tracks like "Calling Dr. Love" and stuff like that. So. I think it was a good track, fast paced, and like you said, I like the riffs in it as well.
Yeah, I mean, I agree with you 100%. Like it's in my maybe top 3 Kiss albums, But like you're saying, I could throw in any track and dig it. But I think it's not as good as "I Want You," but Kiss has kind of nailed the catchy chorus thing. And that's definitely present on this track. But the next track is arguably, and I don't think it's even arguably, it's the biggest song on the album. It's "Calling Dr. Love." It's right up there with "God of Thunder" as like the big Gene track, or the big Gene song. You're gonna hear it every time you go see him live. It's gonna be on any compilation album. And like I said, I like this song better than "God of Thunder." I was saying last episode that I like, Paul Stanley wrote "God of Thunder." Like, I like that demo. I think you had the Kiss box set, which is awesome, and the demo version of "God of Thunder," which is a little more fast paced. it's not as heavy, but I think it's a better version. But Calling Dr. Love, if we're going by like, Gene milestones, is one of my favorite Gene tracks. Of course, written and sung by him. But it's also the second single released from the album. We'll talk later when we get to the first one why this wasn't the first single released. Again, we're gonna say it on every track. Huge riff on this one, and it's Peter as well. Like, he just brings the drumming again on this track. He syncs really well with Gene's kind of heavy sound, even though Peter Criss is not a heavy drummer. Peter Criss has always said that he's more of like a jazz drummer, which is like insane to think that he was in Kiss. But yeah, he definitely has more of kind of that jazz style. But he really kind of just lays the beat down here and does exactly what he needs to do, and it's classic Kiss, classic with the K. But as you were saying earlier, like super sleazy lyrics. Like, it's really no surprise, especially we're here at album 5. But it is again very sleazy Gene lyrics. And I always remember the first time I heard the song, and just as a younger kid, the line when he's like, "The first step to your cure is a kiss," and he they go into the chorus, and it's probably not the reason he says it, but I always thought it was cool because I thought he was like talking about the band Kiss, like throwing it out there, like a little nod to themselves. And I also really liked towards the end they had that call and response where it sounds like he's being paged over the PA system, which I thought was kind of a cool little like, kind of like progressive rock thing that they have going on there. And like we were saying, one of the fun things about Gene is his random noises he'll make, and on this song he does like the at the end when like the drums are rolling and stuff like that. But again, it's just like God of Thunder or 100,000 Years. It kind of sums up Gene perfectly. But you being, a big Gene guy, how do you feel about Calling Dr. Love?
Well, you've heard, have you heard Bad Bad Lovin'?
Bad Lovin'.
That's first time I heard was off this box set. It was the demo for
Yeah. The off the Kiss box set.
Yeah. So I re-listened to. I was listening to Calling Dr. Love today, and I re-listened to Bad Bad Lovin'. And of God of Thunder, Calling Dr. Love. I wouldn't say this is. It's definitely not one of my favorite Kiss songs. But definitely it's one of those songs that people hear it and they instantly okay, this is a Kiss song. I honestly thought the Bad Bad Lovin' demo was pretty good. It was definitely a different pace to the song, but I thought it was catchy. And then have you actually heard? I was reading today on like the inspiration of how he got the name for the song. Have you heard about that?
No, go ahead, man. I'm glad to have you on.
No, so he said he was watching the Three Stooges.
Yeah.
And I guess they were I can't remember the name of the film it was in, but I guess they were in a doctor's office, and somehow they got access to the PA system, and so they were calling Dr. Fine and calling all these like random names over the PA system, and so Gene was like, I should call it Calling Dr. Love. And so that was kind of like the inspiration of the, going from Bad Bad Lovin'. He said he tweaked the song a little bit, and then watching the Three Stooges and getting it to Calling Dr. Love. So I thought that was pretty interesting, as the Three Stooges inspiring a Kiss song.
Nice. Well, there you go, man. That's why I have you on the show, dude. Like, you got all that useless Kiss knowledge back in the day that mom and dad said never worked, but now we're talking on a podcast for free about it. So there you go.
Yeah.
But that's good stuff, man. I didn't know the Three Stooges story. That's classic. I could just see Gene sitting there in like his like massive hair with his like boots up, watching the Three Stooges. That's hilarious. But anyway, keeping with the sleazy lyrics, keeping with the heavy rock and roll and the riffs, and keeping with the Gene Simmons-ness, we got Ladies' Room next. Written by Gene, sung by Gene. It's kind of interesting. We get back-to-back Paul to start the album. Now we get back-to-back Gene, which is cool because like Gene, especially when we were talking like Hotter Than Hell and stuff, was like really kind of absent throughout that album. And and he's definitely present during the 70s much more than he is during the 80s, but it's nice to see him on this album a little more than some of the previous albums. And I like that Peter Criss on this track leaves his hi-hat open instead of having it closed, so it gives it more of a dirty, sleazy rock sound, and it gives it a bit of a heavier, grungy feel as well. That suits Gene's vocals really well. And the cool thing is, too, you can really hear Gene's bass on this track. You know what I mean? Like, it almost sounds like a rhythm guitar, which is funny because Gene actually plays rhythm guitar on this track as well.
Oh, really?
Yeah. And then which is kind of cool, like, the Kiss will do that occasionally. Like, you get Paul Stanley playing the solo on I Want You in the beginning. We get Gene playing rhythm. They don't do it as much on this album. They did a little more in previous albums. You do get cowbell on this one, so any SNL Christopher Walken fans out there, lots of cowbell on this track. I think it's again, like you were saying, it's a solid track, but I would say up to this point in the track listing, probably my least favorite so far. And again, I'm not saying that as in like I think the song sucks. I just say up to this point, I'd say it's probably the weaker, in my opinion, of the two Gene songs we've heard, and definitely the two Paul songs. But what are you kind of feeling about this track?
Yeah, I mean, it's one of those songs where you're kind of like, I mean, you can just read the title of the track and you're like, okay, this is probably a Gene Simmons inspired song. And I'll agree, though. I mean, it's definitely catchy. Definitely not one of my favorites, of the album. But I mean, going along with like the theme of the album as a whole, I mean, definitely, this song fits in with the other tracks.
Yeah, I mean, it's not. I'd put this. If it was on on an album like Hotter Than Hell or something, or Dress to Kill, you'd say it's one of my favorites. But it's just not as strong as the other ones so far. I would say though, funny enough, it's stronger than the next track, Baby Driver, written by yeah, right. Written by Peter and Stan Penridge, and I've talked about Stan Penridge before because he was in the band Chelsea with Peter Criss before Kiss, and he was one of the co-writers of the song Beth. So Stan Penridge is on another Kiss penned track, of course sung by Peter. You get heavy bass, that really kind of heavy opening, and then it kind of doesn't stay heavy. It's I don't know. It's kind of a really weird track. Like it's clearly inspired of like kind of like the roll your windows down and like driving really fast on the highway kind of song, I guess. Which I think was what they're going for. I like Peter's raspy vocals. He's obviously not my favorite singer in Kiss, but when it works, it works. The song's okay. He does let loose. Like towards the end, he's like screaming almost like nonsensical. But again, it's a solid track from Peter and Stan. Peter and Stan work well together because Beth is like the biggest hit they've ever had. So they obviously were channeling something going on there, and they'll channel Beth definitely later on. When we get to the first single. But do you got anything to say about Baby Driver? I feel like we always kind of like skip this track whenever we listen to the album.
I think it's definitely an overlooked track. But as I was listening to it again today, it was funny you mentioned Peter Criss and the raspy vocals because I was jotting down some notes, and that's literally I wrote Peter Criss raspy smiley face. Like that's like the best. That's like the best thing about this track. And like you were saying, like you sit down and you read through the lyrics, and I mean if you've heard the song at least once. By the time you get to anywhere it says "Go Baby Driver," it's like you just hear Peter Criss like yelling out "Go Baby Driver" as loud as he can.
Yeah.
And so I mean I think like you were saying you kind of get a lot of Paul in the first two, and then you get some Gene in the third and fourth tracks. I think putting some Peter Criss into the fifth one, it kind of breaks it up a little bit.
Mm-hmm.
And I appreciate his raspiness throughout the song.
It does. It's a nice little wrench thrown in the gears here, and I mean that in the best way possible. But like, I always thought, I don't know why I thought it was so funny, but at the end when he screams "going 100 miles an hour," he's just like screaming as like loud as possible. I don't know if he was just having a good day or what, but obviously he seems like he's a big car nut or whatever, and again, obviously you said you're driving to work today and listening to it. It's probably a song better suited for when you're driving. Again, I don't think there's any bad tracks on Rock and Roll Over.
Yeah.
Destroyer is their masterpiece, and their Great Expectations is a very weird, not so great track. Even though I did say I love the melody, but the lyrics are like the worst. You stand and clutch your breast. It's like ridiculous, man. But and Hotter Than Hell is full of some weak tracks. But Baby Driver, I think is fine. I kind of really wish we would have got an Ace Frehley pen track on this album, because he's the only one missing. He doesn't have a single track that he's credited with, which kind of bums me out, because granted he doesn't sing to the next album, Love Gun, but I would have loved to have seen an Ace and Peter track, like when they write together, because they have some really cool stuff when they write together. Because obviously they were really good friends in the band. They were the ones that kind of hung out together, and Paul and Gene, I guess, kind of hung out together. In Paul's book, he was like, we never really hung out at all, but it seems that they kind of split it that way. It was Gene and Paul and Ace and Peter. But and we'll talk more about Ace's guitar work, because I think his guitar work is stellar. His name isn't on it in terms of writing, because I think he is such a fantastic writer for Kiss. And actually recently, Paul Stanley and Ace Frehley worked together again. I don't know if you've seen the music video or heard the song, but
no.
Ace Frehley's new album came out, and him and Paul are like, they work together, and like they're supposedly like really had a good time together. So it's kind of cool that like they don't really, there's water under the bridge kind of stuff. I remember when they got inducted in the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame, it was kind of awkward because they didn't want to play with the original lineup. And, there's the whole thing about, Tommy Thayer and Eric Singer wearing their makeup and stuff like that, which I never blame those guys for. They're just doing their job, and they're really good musicians. And I think they're definitely up there with Kiss. Like, they've earned their place in the Kiss, the timeline. But anyway, that's a whole other thing for another time when we get to the later lineups and stuff like that. But I just like that Paul and Ace are like buddies again. That's as a Kiss fan, I like that that's happening. So the next track, Love 'Em and Leave 'Em, by Gene, sung by Gene. Great opening. I feel like we used to make fun of the way Gene, like if you ever seen the music video for this song, the way Gene plays bass, nobody plays bass like that. Like that's like he's hitting one string obviously and just hitting one note, but it's like he would be ripping the string off the neck of the bass the way he would play. I don't know if that was part of like the choreography or something, but like in the music video, it's just really weird. Like they all have like their little thing, but I do love the intro of the song though. There's kind of like that. Again, we're gonna use the word riff a lot, but then there's that snare pop, and then we're just off. I think it's a great sleazy Gene song, and again, it really shows that the band Kiss is really just tight and confident on this album, and I think this is a track that really proves that. The chorus is huge and catchy. The subject matter, again, sleazy Gene Simmons.
It's Gene Simmons' autobiography in one song, pretty much.
Probably, yeah, pretty much. It's the 70s. It's the 70s wrapped up in one song with Gene. You're absolutely right. I do like the. Have you seen the music video?
Yeah.
Yeah, I do love. Aside from the weird Gene plucking his string like a psychopath, I always thought Peter Criss looked really cool. Like the way the camera is positioned, it's over top of him like a bird's eye view, and he's just just rocking on the drums. Paul does like the windmill guitar thing that Pete Townsend from The Who made really famous, and then Ace does a really cool thing where like Ace kind of looks bored, but he does a cool thing where he's on the stairs and he slides down the railing, and he slides like right into the riff or whatever. I thought that was kind of cool, but. This is a track again. We were talking about giving Ace props. I think some really great work from Ace Frehley on this song. Check out the video if you guys haven't seen it. But yeah, you being a big Gene guy, like you said, what do you have to say about this track and his kind of autobiography of it?
Yeah, no, I mean, I think when I first started getting into Kiss, I remember the first time hearing this song. Like, I mean, I think it's pretty obvious what the intentions are of this song and what he's getting at. But I mean, it's one of those songs that's just so catchy that like, I don't care what your take on certain, things are morally and stuff. I mean, this song is just so catchy that you can't help but listen to it.
Yeah. Just good old fashioned rock and roll. And like I said, you shouldn't be surprised by now with Kiss. You know what I mean? We're on what, the 5th album? Like, you know, Gene is here to stay with this stuff, you know. But next track we got Mr. Speed, written by Paul Stanley, and Sean Delaney is here again. Sung by Paul Stanley, so we get Paul back in the mix. Hadn't really heard him in a bit. But, you know, like I said, you know, I have the notes here as well, and I wrote even great intro. You know, we say it all the time, but really this is a album full of really strong intros. Paul comes back in a big bad way with the vocals, and it just cements again that he is the main man in Kiss. You know, when we get to the 80s stuff later on down the road, I mean, he's carrying the weight almost solely on his shoulders. You know, Gene has even said in his autobiography that he kind of dropped the ball in the 80s. You know, he was trying to do movies and everything else, and he wasn't really focusing on Kiss. But Paul here is already laying the foundation and making it very clear that he is, you know, obviously not the sole songwriter, but he is the guy really writing the big kick-ass rock and roll stuff. I do really love the way Paul sings throughout the album, or throughout this track. The overdub harmony parts, like when he extends the word cry, and, you know, the see me part, like he really kind of like draws it out, and like out of nowhere all these vocals, overdub vocals and harmonies come in, kick you in the face. I would say I don't know if it's my favorite guitar work on the album, but it's definitely up there. I think some really cool stuff is going on. Ace is bringing it again. And at the end, it just, I don't even know why Paul says this, but at the end of the track, he just yells, "I don't care." And like, they just like keep, I don't know why he doesn't care, but supposedly he doesn't care. Like, he doesn't give a shit. And he's just going to rock and roll all night and party every day. But what are your thoughts on Mr. Speed?
I mean, this is by far my favorite track on the album.
Oh, right on.
Yeah, I mean, you know, when I first picked up this album, you know, I'd go through and you know, play like the first 10, 15 seconds or so of each song, and like by the time I got to Mr. Speed, it was like, okay, I can't go on to the next song until I hear this one through. Yeah. So I've always been a fan of the song. I was actually reading through the box set thing that I have, because they have the demo version here. I got to listen to it again, because I honestly don't remember what the demo sounds like per se. But it's funny because, you know, Paul's talking about the track and, you know, what it means and everything. And it's funny, you know, they have, you know, Paul Stanley, you know, rhythm guitar, lead vocals, Gene, you got on bass, and this is just a demo. So, and then they got Bob was playing the lead guitar. And then for drums, it just says unknown. So, you know, I don't know if they like left Peter Criss in the bathroom for too long.
That's right. Yeah. They forgot they locked him in there.
Yeah. Or what, but, no, definitely Mr. Speed. Honestly, Mr. Speed's probably, I wrote down my top 5 Kiss songs. Nice. And Mr. Speed's in my top 5, which I think would be surprising to a lot of Kiss fans, but it's so catchy. I just can't get enough of it.
I think, yeah, and the last 3 tracks after this one are all dynamite tracks, and I think that Mr. Speed is a track that I wish was more famous, I guess is the word I'm looking for Kiss. You know what I mean? Because that guitar riff, like I totally know what you're talking about. It's like the Bozek way. Like when you listen to an album, you know, first couple seconds, listen to it, and then you wait for that one to grab you. And it's not like the other songs didn't grab you, but like that riff in the beginning of this song doesn't sound like a normal Kiss riff, and it really does grab you because they're kind of going all over the place. And, you know, Paul Stanley is the king of the catchy verse and chorus, and, you know, using his vocals to be as catchy as possible. And Mr. Speed is, like I said, it's one of the best tracks on the album, definitely. I didn't know that actually that was your favorite track on the album, so that's cool. But yeah, it's a great song. Drummer Unknown, classic. I mean, later on, I mean, it's going to be, you know, that's going to be like kind of like a prophecy here, because like they keep, you know, bringing in studio musicians and saying it's Peter Criss, even though it's not Peter Criss, and all that kind of fun stuff. But the next track is actually my favorite Gene track on the album, See You in Your Dreams, written by Gene, sung by Gene. And I love, this is a song where I love his vocals on the album. This is like classic Gene for me. Like when I talk about Gene being my favorite vocalist in Kiss, it's a song like this that I'm referencing. And it does kind of have like a dream quality to it, the way the vocals work, the way the instrumentation is recorded, kind of like light and airy, but still kind of a bite and kick to it. And I think maybe the best solo from Ace Frehley on the album as well.
Yeah, I'll be honest. I mean, I just I would say this is probably my least listened to track.
Yeah.
I mean, probably because coming after Mr. Speed, I'm like, yeah, let's do this, and then I put it back on Mr. Speed because I don't want to listen to the next track.
Yeah,
so
yeah.
that's probably part of the reason why I haven't listened to it as much. But yeah, I mean, I'll agree with you. Like lyrically for Gene, yeah, definitely. Just in terms of like grabs my attention, catchy as like a Kiss fan, probably not.
Yeah.
Not my favorite, but again, I mean, like I said, every track on this album has a catchy characteristic to it. So.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, it's kind of sandwiched between two great Kiss tracks because the next track here, the second to last track, is Hard Luck Woman, which clearly Kiss, they're smart businessmen, and Beth was a huge smash hit, their biggest hit ever still. And so it's written by Paul Stanley, actually, of course, sung by Peter Criss. Paul Stanley originally wrote it for Rod Stewart to sing. Because you can hear that Rod Stewart kind of vocal. Him and Peter Criss have some very similar raspy vocals. But then they realized, hey, this is like the ballad of the album. Peter Criss sang the ballad on the last album. That was a huge hit. Let's just do that again. So it's. But I jokingly refer to it as the better Beth. Like, I love the song Beth. I'm not one of those Kiss fans that like hates Beth because it's like, a ballad or whatever, any of that kind of stuff. It's not heavy. None of that. Like, I like Beth just fine. It's fun to make fun of it, but I like Beth. But Hard Luck Woman, though, I think is a truly great track. Like, it's one of it's one of my favorite Kiss songs. And I think it, in my opinion, again, this might be like people are going, shut the fuck up, you don't know what you're talking about. But like, I think it's the strongest track on the album because it's Kiss proving to people that they can be a tight, really coherent rock band without distortion and screaming. You know what I mean? Like and I think so many people just shook them off as being just a stupid gimmick rock and roll band with no talent. And Hard Luck Woman is like a truly great song. And again, I'm not throwing like other songs under the bus on this album saying that they're not written well. But I think Hard Luck Woman really proves that they know how to play their instruments. They know how to make harmonies. They know how to do a great ballad track and tell a story. This isn't a sleazy Kiss song. It's a story that they tell. And then Paul does play the 12-string guitar on this. Ace is doing just the classic 6-string guitar as well. But again, I think it's just a damn good rock and roll song. And like I said, I think musically, the strongest song on the album.
Yeah, I think like looking at Beth and looking at Hard Luck Woman, like to really have an appreciation for Kiss as a band as a whole, especially like. During that time, and if you look at really what I consider, their 6 tracks as being like their prime period, up through Love Gun. Like you look at these 2 songs, and it's just like the versatility of the band to go from sleazy to kind of a little fast paced to kind of rhythmic, and then to something like Hard Luck Woman. I think it's just like. I think as you listen through the track, it's kind of like that, breath of fresh air of a Kiss song.
Yeah, definitely.
And I think it's kind of just like a refreshing feeling as you're listening to it.
Yeah, I mean, because the track after this, they still have one more up their sleeve, and it's the hardest rocking song on the album. But yeah, Hard Luck Woman, I think it's just such a great Kiss song, and it's one of the songs that I always like to do as a test. Whenever somebody tells me. They're like, hey, what do you listen to? What do you like? I'm like, oh, I have Beatles, Springsteen, Queen, and I always mention Kiss. And they're like, oh, I hate Kiss. Kiss sucks or whatever. And I won't do it like right there because it's obvious. But down the line, if I'm hanging out with them again, like we're playing like, songs and stuff, I'll play a Hard Luck Woman. And I swear to God, like 9 out of 10 times, the person would go, who is this? This is like really good. And I'm like, it's Kiss, you motherfucker. It's Kiss. You like Kiss. Fuck you. You know what I mean? Like it happens all the time. And it's always such a funny thing to do. And they're always so shocked. Because again, Beth, he's not singing super raspy, so a lot of people don't know Peter Criss vocals. He's doing the kind of the more raspy rock and roll stuff. So it's always such a fun thing to do when someone's like, I hate Kiss, they suck, they're not talented, and then you play them Hard Luck Woman, and like, that song's really good, and you're like, it's Kiss. It's one of my favorite things to do. But speaking of rock and roll and good old rock and roll and sleazy stuff, "Making Love" is the last track on the album, and boy, do they know how to close out an album, because I think this is like the best riff on the album.
Yeah.
It sounds almost, the riff almost sounds ahead of its time, in my opinion. Like, Kiss has like a very kind of like standard, kind of rock and roll kind of feel to it. There are some riffs on this album that sound a little unlike Kiss, but they still work really well, like "Mr. Speed." But I think this is a riff that sounds almost like something you're going to hear in the 80s. That palm muted kind of like, it sounds much more kind of 80s than it does 76. It is written by Paul and Sean Delaney again, so he gets his third track that he helps write on this, and kind of again seen as the unofficial fifth member of Kiss for a reason. Sung by Paul. And just the heaviest, most rockin' track on the whole album. The first time I heard this song, it was like you with "Mr. Speed." When I got to this song, this is like the only song I listened to for like a week. Like, I just listened to this song like over and over again, because I thought it was just like, when I first, like, when it was getting into Kiss, this is the song that I thought Kiss sounded like. You know what I mean? Like that, just like that straight rock and roll. I do love that like Paul throws in the acoustic guitar right before the chorus, to kind of just throw you off just a little bit, and then kick right back in with the chorus and kind of the heavy rock and roll stuff. I wish, kind of like you with "Mr. Speed," I kind of wish this was bigger in the Kiss catalog. Like, I wish it was a more famous Kiss song. Like, I'd love to hear the song live. Ace's solo was fantastic. And for me, this song kind of sums up Rock and Roll Over as not just as the closer, but it's a tight rock and roll band that's found its confidence. And a lot of people were going, what is Kiss going to do after Destroyer? Like, they've had their moment in the sun. Are they going to be able to keep it up? And Rock and Roll Over, in my opinion, delivers 100%.
Yeah. No, I agree 100% with you. I mean, just, I don't typically sit down and listen to an album track 1 through track, whatever, 10.
Yeah.
But, I did that today on my way to work, and I mean, it's just like listening to this to the album as a whole. I mean, it's almost kind of funny, and I don't think that this is what Kiss's intention was with the order of the tracks. But you kind of go from like this sleazy "I Want You," "Take Me," "Dr. Love," "Ladies' Room," all that stuff, and then kind of you love them, you leave them, I'm Mr. Speed, and then it kind of slows down to this, "See You in Your Dreams," "Hard Luck Woman," and then right when you think, okay, maybe Kiss is, maybe they do have, feelings and stuff like that. They're not these sleazy guys.
Yeah.
They hit you with a song like "Making Love," and then, obviously later on they roll right into "Love Gun." And if you've ever seen the cover of the Love Gun album, I think you know what I'm talking about.
Yeah. Especially what the song "Love Gun" is about too.
Yeah, absolutely. So, no, I think that this like is a perfect song. I think it's very underrated, like you said, but just fast-paced rock and roll. Like, you could jam out to this song.
Yo, definitely. And I think that's really kind of like genius, like that you're talking about. Like, it's almost, again, it's almost giving Kiss too much credit, but I love that you made this connection that like it's almost the start of a relationship and the end of a relationship. And like you're saying, like, oh, Kiss really is like looking deep into like what a relationship is, and then the last track is like one of the sleaziest songs in the whole album. Like, nope, it's song "Making Love," and that just is like, that's just, they probably could have called it something way worse. But I mean, again, Rock and Roll Over is one of my favorite Kiss albums. I think their kind of trinity of Destroyer, Rock and Roll Over, and Love Gun is, I'd put that up there with any other band for like the Wham Bam Thank You Ma'am, like 3 in a row, just solid rock and roll albums. And so again, dude, I'm so glad you were able to come on and talk Rock and Roll Over. We've kind of done this years and years ago before we ever did in front of a microphone, just talking about Kiss. But like I said, I definitely want to have you on sometime down the road to talk Unmasked, because there's it's a very interesting album, very different from Rock and Roll Over. And the fact that you were able to buy a copy of it in the mall back in the day, like an original copy of it, is something that you could never ever do now. You'd never be able to find that album anywhere now, especially the original, not the remastered version or anything. So, anyway, again, this has been another episode of Kiss My Podcast. I had my brother on, the Gene to my Paul, talking all things Rock and Roll Over. Thanks again for coming on, man. I really appreciate it.
Yeah, appreciate it. It was a great time. Thank you.
Excellent, man. All right, well, we'll be back next week or next month talking Love Gun with my buddy Mike, who's actually in a Kiss cover band and doing a Kiss cover show recently. He plays Ace and one of the best guitarists I know. I'm looking forward to talking about that. Mick, thanks again for being on, and remember to rock and roll night and party every day. Thanks for listening.
This has been another Geek Out production. If you enjoyed what you heard, hey, we've got a new commentary every Monday. We've got a special episode every Friday. Of course, there's the usual catching up show every Wednesday. And you get book club episodes just about every Tuesday these days. Thanks for listening.